My name is Jake, and if I had any lingering, unspoken doubts about my place within the family ecosystem, they were irrevocably vaporized the day I stumbled upon the will. It wasn't some solemn, prearranged family meeting, my parents sitting us down with grave faces and a pot of tea to break the news with careful, rehearsed words. No, the revelation of my ultimate insignificance came not with a pronouncement, but with a whisper of sheer, dumb luck. It happened a few months ago. I was at their house, the same house I had been helping to pay for over the past 5 years. The mortgage, the property taxes, the occasional grocery runs, the constant fixing and maintaining, I was the silent, structural beam holding the entire rickety edifice up. All while my brother, Eric, contributed precisely nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean a profound, gravitational void of responsibility. No job, no ambitions, just a permanent state of lounging, waiting for life's bounty to be delivered to him on a silver platter, a service my parents seemed all too eager to provide. That particular afternoon, I was, as usual, playing the role of unpaid tech support and personal assistant. My dad had asked me to scan a stack of documents for him, a jumble of legal and financial paperwork he couldn't be bothered to figure out how to digitize himself. I didn't think twice about it. It was just another item on the endless list of Jake's chores. I was halfway through the monotonous task, the scanner humming its familiar tune, when I saw it. A simple manila folder, nestled between a bank statement and an insurance form. The label, typed in a stark, official font, made my breath catch. Estate plan and last will and testament. Now, I'm not a snoop. I value privacy. But this was different. This was a document that, by its very nature, defined the future of the family I was single-handedly keeping afloat. Was it so wrong to wonder where I stood after years of financial propping up? Curiosity, that old serpent, coiled in my gut and struck. I opened the folder. The words I saw made the floor lurch beneath my feet. It was all there, in cold, unassailable legalese. Everything. The house, their savings, their investments, their assets. All of it directed to Eric. My eyes scanned the pages, frantic, looking for my name, for some footnote, some token gesture. There was nothing. Except, of course, for the standard, boilerplate preamble about loving both of their sons equally. Equally. The word was a sick joke. They loved us so equally that they had ensured their golden child would inherit the entire kingdom, while the son who was actively draining his own resources to maintain the castle walls wasn't even granted a passing mention in the deed. I felt a fool, a colossal, gaping fool. Here I was, bending over backwards, rearranging my life, my finances, my sanity, to ensure their bills were paid and their pantry was stocked, while they sat in quiet conspiracy, planning a future where I was airbrushed out of the family portrait entirely. And Eric? He wasn't just lazy, he was entitled, a master of weaponized incompetence. He never lifted a finger, never contributed a dime, yet he had somehow sold them on the narrative that he, the perpetually struggling baby bird, was the one who deserved the entire worm. Maybe it was because he was younger. Maybe it was the ingrained habit of coddling him. Maybe he was just a better manipulator. The reason didn't matter. The result, printed in black and white, was their final brutal choice. I sat there, the paper trembling in my hand. The physical tremor was a cocktail of pure, white-hot rage and a deep, chilling sense of betrayal. How long had this been the plan? Had they always seen me as nothing more than a temporary financial stopgap, a free safety net to be used and discarded? Did any of my sacrifices, my late nights worrying about their finances, ever truly register as anything other than my expected duty? I have no idea how long I sat there, trapped in that vortex of humiliation. Eventually, my dad's voice cut through the static in my head. "Hey Jake, what's taking so long in there?" he asked, walking back into the room. I didn't hide the document. I didn't fold it away in shame. Instead, I held it up, the paper a stark flag of my discovery, and looked him dead in the eye. My voice, when it came out, was unnervingly calm, a flat lake hiding a tectonic shift beneath. "So, this is how it is," I said. "Everything. To Eric. After everything I've done for you." My dad's face went pale for a split second, a flicker of caught-in-the-act panic. But then it vanished, replaced by a weary sigh, as if I were a toddler throwing a tantrum over a broken toy. "Jake," he said, his tone dripping with condescension, "it's not what you think." "Really?" I snapped, the calm shattering. "Because it looks pretty damn clear to me. I've been paying your mortgage, helping with groceries, fixing this house up while Eric does nothing. And you still decided he's the only one who matters." He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Instead of an explanation, instead of a justification, he just muttered the two most useless words in the English language. "It's complicated." That was it. No apology. No attempt to rationalize their decision. Just a weak, dismissive excuse and an expectant look, as if he were waiting for me to swallow my pride, nod, and go back to being their personal AITA. I should have walked out right then. I should have left the will on the scanner and never looked back. But some masochistic part of me needed to hear it from both of them. I needed the full, brutal picture. "Mom," I called out, my voice sharper than I intended. When she came in, her eyes immediately landed on the will in my hand. Her reaction was a masterclass in quiet guilt. She at least had the decency to look ashamed, but the words that followed made my blood boil. "Jake, honey," she began, her voice soft and placating, as if she were soothing a spooked animal, "you don't need the inheritance. You have a good job. You're so independent. Burke, he struggles. We just want to make sure he's taken care of." That was the moment. The precise nanosecond when something fundamental inside me broke. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a thoughtless oversight. They had sat down, discussed it, and consciously, deliberately, decided that my independence was a punishment and Eric's helplessness was a virtue to be rewarded. They had spent a lifetime enabling his laziness, and now they were cementing that enablement into their legacy, handing him everything while I was tossed aside like a used tool. I took a deep, shuddering breath, clenched my jaw so tight I thought my teeth might crack, and set the will down carefully on the table. "Got it," I said, my voice returning to that eerie, deathly calm. "Glad to know where we stand." Then I turned and walked out of the house. I didn't run. I didn't slam the door immediately. I walked with a deliberate, measured pace, ignoring their sputtered protests, their calls of my name. The sound of the door closing behind me wasn't a slam of anger. It was a period at the end of a very long, very painful sentence. They had made their decision. Now it was time for me to make mine. I didn't go back. I didn't call. I didn't text. For the first time in years, I let them handle their own problems. If a pipe burst, they could figure it out. If they needed milk, they could find their own way to the store. And most importantly, when that mortgage bill arrived in its familiar windowed envelope, I was no longer the one opening my checkbook. The silence lasted about 2 weeks. At first, I think they operated under the assumption that I was just pouting, that I'd eventually cool off and come crawling back, apologetic for having dared to question their authority. They were waiting for me to revert to form. But as the days ticked by with no word from me and more importantly, no financial assistance, you could practically feel the atmosphere shifting through the phone lines. The comfortable safety net they had taken for granted had suddenly vanished. It started with a text from my dad. Not, "Hey, how are you?" Not, "We miss you." Not even a passive-aggressive, "Are you still upset?" It was pure, unadulterated transaction. "Dad, the property taxes are due." I stared at the screen, a bitter, hollow amusement bubbling up inside me. The audacity was almost impressive. It was a cold, impersonal message, as if he were texting his bank, not the son he had just financially disowned. My fingers flew over the keyboard, my response as cold as his demand. "Me, I'm sure Eric will handle it. Since the house is his and all." The response was immediate. Within 5 minutes, my phone lit up with a call from my mom. I let it ring, listening to the shrill tone until it went to voicemail. A text followed. "Mom, Jake, please don't be like this. We need to talk." Oh, now they wanted to talk. Now that the bills were piling up and the reality of their choice was starting to bite. I let an hour pass, each minute a tiny rebellion, before I replied. "Me, there's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. Now you can live with it." I assumed that would be the end of it. I had drawn my line in the sand. But then, of course, Eric decided to enter the fray. His text came late that evening, and the second I saw his name, I knew it would be a masterpiece of oblivious entitlement. Eric, dude, why are you being such a drama queen? It's not a big deal. Just help them out like you always do. I nearly laughed out loud. Not a big deal? He had the nerve to reduce my entire sense of betrayal to a minor inconvenience. Me? No, I think you've got it covered. Since you're the favorite and all. Eric? Oh my God, are you seriously mad about the will? Grow up, man, it's just money. The hypocrisy was so thick you could choke on it. When it was my money funding their lives, it was a son's duty. When it was his money on the line, it was suddenly just money. Me? Then you won't mind using some of that money to pay for the mortgage, right? Silence. A beautiful, telling silence. A few minutes later, my mom resumed her campaign, this time deploying the heavy artillery of guilt. Mom, Jake, we are your parents. Family takes care of each other. We did so much for you growing up and now you're just abandoning us. I had to physically put my phone down and take a deep, steadying breath. Abandoning them? I had spent my entire adult life ensuring they never had to want for anything, all while they coddled Eric and paved his path with gold. And now, when they were finally facing the consequences of their own decisions, I was the villain. Me, you made it clear I wasn't part of the family when you left me out of the will. Now Eric can take care of you. I could picture her, hand to her chest, gasping in dramatic offense. She always had a flair for the theatrical when she was playing the victim. Then came my dad's final text of the night, the one that truly made me see red. Dad, we're not asking for much. Just enough to cover the mortgage for a few more months until we figure things out. Don't be selfish. Selfish. The word echoed in my skull, a clanging bell of injustice. I had sacrificed my own financial security, my time, my energy for years. I had done everything society tells you a good son should do. And my reward was to be written out of their lives in perpetuity and then labeled selfish for no longer accepting the role. My jaw clenched. I took one final, deep breath, my decision absolute. I'm done. I sent the message and then I turned my phone off. The silence that followed was profound. They had made their bed. Now they could lie in it. The peace lasted for a day. I knew they wouldn't give up easily, but I wasn't prepared for the sheer audacity of their next move. The next morning, I woke up to a notification on my phone. It wasn't a text or a call. It was a bank transfer request. From my mom. I stared at it, my mind refusing to process the information for a moment. She had actually, literally, sent me a digital panhandling request. The amount, $3,500. The exact sum of their overdue mortgage payment. No message. No please. Just a cold, shameless demand, assuming I would simply comply. I declined the request without a moment's hesitation. Not 5 minutes later, my phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. Another text buzzed through. Mom, Jake, I know you saw the request. Why did you decline it? I took my time, savoring the power of my own refusal. Me, because it's not my responsibility. Try Eric. Another call. Declined. Another text, this one laced with panic. Mom, we are going to lose the house if you don't help us. So now it was an emergency. After all these years of treating me like a walking wallet, the well had run dry and they were finally feeling the thirst. Me, maybe you should have thought about that before deciding I didn't matter. A few seconds later, Dad chimed in, his manipulation even more blatant. Dad, you're really going to let your parents become homeless? That one actually made me laugh out loud. Become homeless? They had savings. They had retirement accounts they were hoarding for Eric. They just didn't want to touch their own money. They were so accustomed to the convenience of mine. I ignored them for the rest of the day. That night, Eric, the ever-loyal attack dog, sent his 2 cents. Eric, dude, just send them the money already. You're making this a bigger deal than it is. This entitled little prick, who had never worked a day in his life, thought he could lecture me on responsibility. Me? You mean the same money you're inheriting? Why don't you send it? His response was swift and predictable. Eric, You know I don't have that kind of cash right now. There was the stunning lack of self-awareness. It was perfectly acceptable for me to drain my accounts, but the second the responsibility fell to him, it was an impossibility. Me? Guess you better figure it out then, bro. You're the one they chose. No response. I went to bed feeling a sense of grim satisfaction, as if I had finally scrubbed off a layer of grime that had been caked on for years. But the next day, the situation escalated from a digital siege to a physical one. I was at work when my personal cell phone rang. It was the front desk of my apartment building. Hey Jake? Your parents are here, the concierge said, her voice hesitant. I nearly dropped the phone. What? In the lobby. They're saying it's an emergency and that you won't answer their calls. My God. They had shown up at my home. My private sanctuary. They had crossed the ultimate boundary. Please do not let them up, I said, my voice tight. I'm not expecting them. There was an awkward pause. They're being kind of pushy. I clenched my jaw, the anger a hot, solid mass in my chest. I don't care. They can leave. I hung up and immediately a text from Mom flashed on my screen. Mom, we are downstairs. Open the door. No question. No explanation. Just a demand, as if she were the queen and I her subject. I didn't reply. Mom, Jake, we're not leaving until you talk to us. I exhaled sharply, standing up from my desk. If they wanted a confrontation, they would get one. They thought they could corner me, ambush me in my own home and bully me into submission. They were about to learn a very painful lesson. I stormed out of my apartment and down the hallway, my blood boiling with a righteous fury. I wasn't scared. I was incensed. The sheer, unmitigated gall of these people. I yanked the main lobby door open, and there they were. Mom, Dad, and Eric, standing in a tight, pathetic little huddle like a dysfunctional superhero team. Mom had her arms crossed, her disappointed matriarch look locked and loaded. Dad stood stiffly, hands shoved in his pockets, his face a mask of frustrated entitlement. And Eric? He had the nerve to look bored, as if this whole drama was a tedious interruption to his day of doing nothing. The moment Mom saw me, the theatrics began. Jake, finally. We need to talk. I leaned against the doorframe, mirroring her crossed arms, a picture of immovable defiance. No. You need to leave. She blinked, physically recoiling as if my words were a physical force. Excuse me? You heard me. My voice was calm, controlled, but firm as steel. You don't get to just show up at my apartment demanding money. It's insane. Dad let out a sharp, dismissive scoff. Are you really going to let us lose the house over a petty grudge? I let out a cold, mirthless laugh. Petty grudge? Oh, you mean the one where you decided I was good enough to pay your bills but not good enough to be in your will? That grudge. Mom gasped, her hand fluttering to her chest as if I'd physically struck her. Jake, that's not fair. We only did what we thought was best for the family. I tilted my head, my gaze unwavering. Best for the family? You mean best for Eric. Just say it. A heavy, suffocating silence fell over the lobby. Eric, who had been studying a piece of abstract art on the wall with sudden intensity, finally spoke up. Look, man, I don't even want to be involved in this. I didn't ask for anything. I turned my full attention to him, finally letting the leash off my anger. No, you just sit back and take everything that's handed to you. You're 28 years old, Eric. Get a damn job. His face flushed a deep, blotchy red. Dude, what the hell? I took a step closer, my voice dropping to a low, intense whisper. You heard me. You want to inherit the house? Start acting like a homeowner. You want to be the golden child? Start paying their damn bills. I'm done being your personal bank. Eric looked away, suddenly finding the polished floor tiles fascinating. Mom took a sharp, recalibrating breath, switching back to her guilt trip programming. Jake, he's your brother. I nodded slowly. Yep. And I've supported him longer than you ever have. Dad's face darkened. You're being selfish. I laughed, a real, genuine laugh that felt good. Oh, that's rich. Coming from you. I gestured between the two of them. You two decided that Eric deserved everything and I deserved nothing. And now that it's time to pay the price for that choice, you're trying to manipulate me into fixing it for you. Happening. Mom's voice sharpened, losing its placating tone. We thought you'd be mature about this. I raised an eyebrow. Mature? You mean quietly accept that I was betrayed and keep paying your bills? Because let's be real, that's what you wanted. Dad stepped forward, trying to use his height to intimidate me like he did when I was a child. Jake, we raised you. We fed you, clothed you, gave you everything. The least you can do is help us now. I looked him dead in the eye, no trace of the obedient son left in my gaze. I already did. For years. And you repaid me by cutting me out. Mom's lip began to tremble, the waterworks threatening. We thought you'd understand. I exhaled, shaking my head in sheer disbelief. Oh, I understand perfectly. I understand that I was never family to you. Just a paycheck. Silence again. Thick, undeniable, damning silence. I turned back to Eric, who was still pretending to be invisible. And you? What's your excuse? You had years to grow up, to get your life together, to contribute. But you didn't. Because you knew they'd always take care of you. And when they're gone, you just expected me to step in, huh? Eric finally snapped, his voice cracking with indignant whine. What do you want me to say, man? I didn't ask for this. I nodded slowly. But you didn't ask. You just benefited. His mouth opened, then closed. He had nothing. No defense. No justification. Just the empty, echoing entitlement he'd been fed his whole life. Mom tried one last, desperate guilt trip, her voice breaking. Jake, we're family. Family takes care of each other. I stared at her for a long, painful moment, letting her words hang in the air before I delivered the final blow. Exactly, I said, my voice quiet but clear as glass. So why didn't you take care of me? She froze. Her mouth parted but no sound came out. No words. No comeback. Nothing. The mask had finally slipped, and there was nothing behind it but the stark, ugly truth of their favoritism. I let out a slow breath, feeling lighter than I had in years, as if I had shed a leaden coat. We're done here. I turned and walked back inside, the heavy door clicking shut behind me, a final, resonant period on the story of us. Before I even made it back to my couch, my phone buzzed with one last text from Dad. Dad, well, after everything we've done for you, you're really going to abandon us. I smirked, my fingers flying over the screen with a sense of finality. You abandoned me. I'm just finally accepting it. I hit send. Then one by one I blocked their numbers. I built a digital wall, brick by brick, and sealed myself off from their toxicity. But I was naive to think that would be the end. Blocking them only forced them to find a new battlefield. And they chose the most public one they could find, social media. It started subtly. My parents, who could barely figure out how to attach a photo to an email, suddenly became prolific posters. The posts were masterpieces of passive aggression, disguised as mournful reflections on family values. Mom posted, "It's so sad when you realize you didn't raise your son to be a selfish man. True family helps each other, no matter what." Hashtag family first, hashtag disappointed. Her flock of friends descended in the comments, clucking their sympathy and decrying my ingratitude. Dad shared a meme, so-called family should never turn their back when you need them most. We gave everything to our children, and this is how we're repaid. He tagged me adding, I hope you're happy. But the real piece de resistance came from Eric. He shared a long, rambling post that was so dripping with false virtue it was nauseating. Some people think family is just about money. They don't understand it's about love and sacrifice. I'd do anything for my parents. But some people are just too wrapped up in themselves to realize that true love is about helping those who raised you. I wish some people could learn what it really means to be family. I love my parents and I'm grateful for everything they've done. That was it. The final straw. They had successfully spun the narrative. I was the villain, the ungrateful, money-obsessed son, and they were the poor, abandoned parents with their loyal, loving younger son. They were painting my justified boundaries as a cruel abandonment. I didn't react immediately. I let the fury simmer, then cool into a hardened resolve. I would not let them control the story. If they wanted to take this public, I would give the public the truth. I opened my own Facebook, the one I used for close friends and real connections, and I began to type. I didn't resort to name-calling or petty insults. I wrote a testimony, a chronicle of the truth. Here is what I posted. I've remained quiet for a while, but I can no longer stay silent while my character is being publicly assassinated. My family has been posting extensively about me, portraying me as the selfish son who has cruelly abandoned them. It's time for the other side of the story. For the last 5 years, since I was financially able, I have been the primary support for my parents. I have paid a significant portion of their mortgage, covered property taxes, bought their groceries, and handled countless repairs on their home. I did this willingly, out of love and a sense of duty. However, I recently discovered that in their will, they have left everything they own. The house, their savings, all assets, entirely to my brother, Eric. I was not included in any capacity, not even as a secondary beneficiary. This was not an oversight. It was a conscious, deliberate choice. My brother is 28 years old. He has never held a steady job, never contributed financially to the household, and has been entirely supported by my parents and, indirectly, by me. When I confronted my parents about this, their justification was that I don't need it because I have a good job and that Eric struggles, so they need to ensure he is taken care of. My years of sacrifice were used against me as a reason to disinherit me. I made the difficult decision to stop financing a future from which I was explicitly excluded. I stopped paying the bills for a house that will never be mine, for parents who did not see fit to acknowledge my role in their lives. The posts you are seeing are a direct result of that decision. They are not about family, they are about money. They are angry because the free funding has stopped. They have labeled me selfish for no longer allowing myself to be used. To my parents, I wish you had valued my presence as much as you valued my wallet. To Eric, it is time for you to finally grow up and support the parents you are so eager to inherit from. This is not me turning my back on family. This is me finally choosing self-respect after years of being treated as a secondary character in my own family. I am done being the backup plan, the ATM, the convenience son. I deserve to be more than a line item in a budget, and I am finally choosing myself. Thank you to those who have reached out with true support. The truth needed to be told. I hit post. The relief was instantaneous and overwhelming. It was as if a huge, poisonous weight had been surgically removed from my soul. The truth was out, unvarnished and undeniable. The reactions were swift. A flood of private messages from cousins, old friends, even some of my parents' acquaintances, expressing shock and support. They saw through the charade. The narrative was shifting. The backlash from my family was predictably vicious. Eric called me a traitor. Dad left a screaming voicemail about how I'd ruined the family's reputation. But their words had lost all power. They were the desperate flailing of people who had lost control. I didn't engage. I simply blocked them on every platform, a final, digital severance. In the weeks that followed, the initial storm of emotion faded, replaced by a profound and steady peace. The constant low-grade anxiety of their demands, the weight of their expectations, the sting of their favoritism, it was all gone. I was free. I don't know what happened to the house. I don't know if Eric finally got a job or if they had to dip into their precious savings. And for the first time, I genuinely don't care. Their problems are no longer mine to solve. So no, I don't feel bad for cutting them off. I feel liberated. I was a son, not a subsidy. I deserve to be loved for who I was, not for what I could provide. And from now on, I am building a life surrounded by people who see me, value me, and respect me. A family of choice, not of obligation. The chapter of Jake the doormat is closed for good. The rest of my story is mine to write.